piece. But for those of you who've been here before, you know the spiel. For those of you who haven't been here before, the first thing we always do is talk about our legal disclaimer. And it is shortened greatly since I think our first meeting, but here it is in its entirety. I am communicating today in my official capacity on behalf of FedRAMP at the General Services Administration. We hold these meetings to enhance transparency between industry and FedRAMP so that we can open a dialogue and share new developments. Nothing that we share constitutes business advice, and any reference in this conversation to any specific commercial product or use of any corporation name is for the information and convenience of the public and does not constitute endorsement, recommendation, or favoring by the GSA. That being said, we'll move into our agenda today. If you are tracking or have been tracking the changes on the website, or if you follow Pete on LinkedIn, you know there's been a lot of changes that have happened over the past few months. There are also a lot of changes getting ready to happen, in terms of just administrative changes to the community groups, which if you're here, you at least know some of the changes that have happened. There's been a lot of updates to our website, the documentation, and we are getting ready to release a few Rev5 balance improvement releases, and somehow the V dropped off this agenda, so apologies on that. And then we are going to talk some of the upcoming RFCs, which is when I think most of the emojis will come out to Pete. But without further ado, let's talk administrative updates, and over to you, Ryan.
Thanks, Paul. So if folks joining can't figure it out already, we are using Google Meet for our first meeting. We have a reserved number of licenses for Zoom, and so we've moved over to Google Meet. So I apologize, as this is our first meeting and we're starting to figure out the features, turn on and off and let people in. So if you hear some buzzing or dinging, it's us letting people in the room. All of the meetings are going to be posted on our FedRAMP community groups page. And these are recurring meetings. For the Rev5 meetings, they will be the first Wednesday of every month. You'll be able to download the ICS file and save it to your computer. If we have any meeting changes, we will use that page to update. So if for some reason you join and there's no meeting, please go to that page and take a look to see if the meeting is still happening. Another administrative update, we have the emoji features on. We've turned off the group chat just to keep the side conversation down, but we do have the Q&A enabled. If you're looking to ask questions, you can click the 9 dots in the lower right-hand corner, scroll down to the Q&A section, and we'll take a look at your questions. And as they come in, we do have that feature turned on where we can go through and make sure that we're only posting questions that are relevant to today's meeting. So we'll be managing that throughout the meeting. With that said, let's pass it over to back to you, Paul. Correct?
Yes, it is back to me. I'll talk briefly here about a lot of the updates that have gone on over the past, three-ish months. Right. First and foremost, we did a major process documentation updates. Right, that includes our CSP authorization playbook, agency authorization playbook, and continuous monitoring playbook. We had a lot of as we were delving through these. Right, not just documents embedded in these playbooks, but there were documents linked to other documents with documents embedded. And it really, as we started to update these, it really became prevalent that we've had this monstrosity of documents linked to each other. And we had a really big concerted effort over the past few months to kind of consolidate all the information that was out there, consolidated into kind of 3 standardized playbooks, and change some of the visualization associated with it as well. So in, I think, December, we released all 3 updates to the playbook. Over the last few months, we've gone to webitize them. So if you go to the documents now, they're actually web pages. That just helps us from a configuration management perspective. And when I talk levels of consolidation, right, if we just talk about the continuous monitoring playbook itself, that we consolidated, I want to say 13 both documents that were individually published into that continuous monitoring playbook. So it was a pretty hefty consolidation. Like I said, they're all webitized now, so you can go there. They'll kind of stay updated. Each document not just was consolidation, but we added the links to all the newest templates. Once again, I'll talk here in a second about released some of the updated templates in the next section. We incorporated a lot of the changes from the BIRs, a lot of the nomenclature that we're using within the BIRs as well. You'll see that prevalent throughout the documents. We also updated to get rid of a lot of the things that have since gone away, things like the JAB. So there's no more, should be no more references to that. Like I said, lastly, we're turning them into kind of living web pages. If you do see any errors, please feel free to reach out to info at. It is a very small team that we have, so it will most likely go to one of the four of us sitting here with you today, and we'll make sure we get it updated. When it comes to it's updated, you'll see that we released updates to SSP Appendix A, the SAR Appendix B, our FedRAMP control baseline, and those really covered a few changes from FedRAMP's perspective when it comes to expected controls. Really along the lines of encryption and segmentation, things that we've had RFCs out for, right, like SC7, as you know. So those have all been changed as well. And then we also, in the security controls baseline, just to kind of alleviate some of the questions that we get pretty regularly at info at, we also added a column, I want to say it was column J, that identified those controls that have some sort of continuous monitoring or some sort of periodic requirement, and those periodic requirements are identified as well in that. And lastly, when we talk about a lot of the updates, kind of the previous MO that we've had is that if we've ever released a template, if we've ever released a document, if we've ever released a website update, we've always archived those and made our archives public. That's kind of caused a lot of issues in terms of old templates being used. Even though it's blatantly stated archive, we still get a lot of old stuff in. The new MO is to, if the content has no relevance, we are, keeping our archive so that we're in lieu with all the records requirements, but we are not making those public anymore, right? Once content is no longer relevant or is superseded by new guidance, it's no longer publicly accessible, right? I think over the past few months, we've dropped 160 something archived web pages, whether it's from the FedRAMP archive, from the facts. So yeah, you should see a lot of updates and like I said, lots of action going on and lots of work during the shutdown. So with that, I will pass it to Nicole, I believe.
No, this one's over to me, I think, for the roadmap update. So we just like to flag, as always, a reminder that we have a public roadmap, although normally part of my spiel is that we update this every 2 weeks at each of our sprints, except for as I went to grab the link for this, I realized I forgot to update it over the weekend. So it has not yet been updated for the end of the year sprint. Blame New Year's, holidays, vacations, etc. We'll make sure to get that updated today. This is intended to be a place for folks that are interested in paying attention to what's going on with FedRAMP to go on a bi-weekly basis and see what's changing. I dropped a link to the full repo rather than the specific board because you can see summary information about FedRAMP. You can look at the progress.md, which shows all of the changes to tickets. And not everything that we work on is going to be listed here. But in general, this gives you a good idea of what we're focused on and what we are trying to do. It is really intended to be a routine, regular resource for people to visit. I tend to do updates either Fridays at the end of sprint, sometimes over the weekend. We won't talk too much about that. So make it a point to check it out Monday every 2 weeks. Put a thing on your calendar, see what's changed, see what's going on with FedRAMP. So you always have the latest because we are always responding and changing to various things going on in the real world. So with that, we're gonna ship this over to Nicole to talk a little bit about the balance and improvement releases that we have queued up. Actually, before we do that, I'm going to answer one of the questions related to optional balance improvement releases. And there was a question here from, wait, where did I go? Where did I see it? I could have sworn I saw one about that. If the CSP wants to adopt one of the balance improvements for Rev5, do we have to have agency explicit approval, or is it enough if the agency says it should be fine and does not object to the adoption? So this is a complicated question because it's going to depend a little bit based on your agency, your risk appetite, your positioning, et cetera, and changes within the FedRAMP environment. Right now, if a balance release is in beta, so it's in open beta or closed beta, then we expect you to at least check with your agencies to make sure that they are not going to be really pissed off if you adopt it. We are actually going to be creating some formal communications and having some votes with the FedRAMP board this month to formalize these as things that agencies are supposed to follow. We'd like this to move towards a world where, because the balance improvement releases are designed to simplify the agency workload, that agencies will actually be encouraging their cloud service providers to do this, starting with the significant change notification process. But for now, you are best off, as always, having communications with your agency. I will also always point out you need to talk to your lawyers about any contracts that you may have in place, because some agencies may have established a contract with you that required certain things that are different than what FedRAMP requires, and therefore what FedRAMP says doesn't go because you committed to something else. But in general, explicit approval is not intended. The intent is that these changes apply across all of the government for all of agencies, and if you have problems with one agency that is preventing you from adopting something, but you have other agencies that want it, then that is not in the interests of the government for you to not to adopt it. You should adopt it and coordinate with everyone to make that happen. All right, so let's talk about mandatory mandatory balance improvement releases with the FedRAMP security inbox. Nicole, Paul, next slide.
Cool. All right. There is an easy place to look up all the balance improvement releases that we're putting out for Rev5. It's on our documentation website, nicely organized for you, broken down by mandatory and optional so that you can keep track of where we are. Please go familiarize yourself with all of the balance improvement releases that we're putting out. Some of them are optional going into open betas, so you can participate with those as is convenient for you. Others are mandatory. So let's jump into some of the mandatory ones. One which is active right now and one which is coming up in a couple months. Paul, can you shift the slide? There we go. All right, so the currently active mandatory balance improvement release that we have for Rev5 is the FedRAMP security inbox. This one went into effect this week. So we are expecting every cloud service provider to maintain an operational security inbox that we can email when there are important FedRAMP updates, important security updates that you need to know about. When CISA releases an emergency directive, often we have follow-on requirements for cloud service providers, agency customers. That's where we're going to be sending all of that information. We realized after CISA had a couple emergency directives over the fall that not all cloud service providers were checking that their security inboxes, A, work, and B, were receiving email and like actually doing something about that. So we made it mandatory. So now we are going to be testing your security inboxes. You can check what you have listed as your security inbox by looking at your marketplace listing. The security email POC that is on your marketplace listing is the one we are going to be using unless you send us a different one. So make sure those are up to date. We are planning to test that in February and then go read the actual documentation because there are some potentials for corrective action plans and everything else if we don't get responses based on the tests or any real security notifications that we need to send out to those inboxes.
So let's talk a little bit about what that looks like for everyone, because this is one of those things where it shouldn't have to be a requirement, and it's really unfortunate that we did, but at the same time, it's really important, and we really want to make sure that everyone is tracking to it. So as Nicole said, the basic requirements you come through here is that you have an email that we, FedRAMP, can communicate with you on behalf of the government and that you will receive and respond to. If that doesn't exist, then ultimately you will lose your FedRAMP authorization. There's no excuses for this. There's no justification. If you do not have a way that we can communicate with you, you cannot have a FedRAMP authorization. Like, that should be simple and obvious, and no one I think should disagree with that. Obviously, you need to be able to hear from FedRAMP. Now, the cool thing about the FedRAMP security inbox is that it's actually the first set of new requirements. In fact, the first set of requirements in a long time that actually has requirements explicitly for FedRAMP, for us. And like, this is our way of transparently communicating how we're going to go about doing something and what to expect from us. And it includes things like we have to use properly identified email so that you don't have to worry about someone pretending to be FedRAMP, because if you get an email from FedRAMP.gov, you know it's an email from FedRAMP.gov. It includes clarifications about how we will tell you exactly what is happening and what we expect you to do. So for example, if we do a communication out to a cloud service provider that we say, all right, there's an emergency, we need to know this about your cloud service. It's going to be very clearly labeled as an emergency, and it will include a very clear list of actions. You must go fill out this form. It will include this date. It will include very clear corrective actions. If you do not fill out this form by this date, this will happen to you. The intent of this is to create a contract between us that enables you to respond to us with clear ways and enables us to be really clear about emergencies. I just want to be really this is not an opportunity for FedRAMP to bully you. We are not going to be jerks. We are not going to send things on Saturday for no reason to see if you respond and things like that. But we do have very strict requirements. And one of those is response times. We expect cloud services to acknowledge and respond to these actions as if they are emergencies, if they are an emergency. For high impact service providers, that response time is very, very, very fast. We actually received feedback during the RFC process on this that seemed unfair. And I have to admit, one of the very few times that I completely ignored public feedback, because if you want your cloud service offering to be capable of being used in an event where a problem with your cloud service can result in a loss of life, then you need to respond to an email from us within 8 hours. And I don't think that's unreasonable. If you can't do that, you should not be a high. In fact, I wanted that to be 1 hour, but we decided to be a little nice. Maybe we'll improve it in the future. So what does implementation look like? Well, actually, first of all, and those requirements are less for moderate and low, especially low. We understand low impact. You're not going to have 24/7 on call over the weekend, things like that. That's fine. It should be. You're low impact. Nobody's going to die if there's a problem with your service for 3 days. So you don't have to necessarily respond that fast. When it comes to how we're going to test this and what happens next, the default is that every quarter we're going to analyze this. We will do that by sending out an emergency test. That emergency test will go to every cloud service provider to the email that we have listed, either the public one or the private one if somebody has requested a private one for us. It will include a link to a form, and there will be instructions, and you will be expected to click that form, follow the instructions, do the thing. None of this will be unreasonable. There will be no wild goose chases just to see if you can do it, but you will be asked to do that stuff. The first emergency test, there will be no punishment. If your security inbox doesn't meet the requirements, etc., it's not okay, but it is what it is. We're not going to punish you immediately. What we will do, however, is publish the results of that test for every cloud service provider. That means there's going to be a chart that shows how quick people responded based on their impact levels. And it will have your cloud service provider. If you are hyperscaler number 3 and it took you with a FedRAMP high and it took you 4 days to respond, you're going to look really bad in public. So we want you to get in front of this. In the future, once it becomes a formal thing and there is no more grace period, as we do these quarterly tests, we will publish this as a security metric within your FedRAMP authorization. So it is very important that people be responsive to these emergencies. In general, again, aside from the quarterly tests, you are unlikely to receive an emergency request from FedRAMP unless there is an emergency directive, some intelligence, or other related stuff. We don't plan on abusing this. So don't worry too much. I am guessing that there is going to be some questions related to this. So I'm going to look through and see if we can address some of these.
Yeah, I've seen some of the questions. So somebody's asking what the level of effort in responding to the security inbox test is. Pete covered that a little bit, but we're not expecting this to be a huge lift for you. We just want to make sure that there is somebody at the other end of that inbox that's monitoring it within the timeframes required by the balance improvement release. So depending on whether you're low, moderate, or high, that determines how quickly you need to respond. But it should be very low effort, just saying, hey, we're here, we got it.
Yeah, I mean, like the classic example is we might send you a form that says, or send you an email that says, go fill out this Google form. And the Google form will be like, I got this email. I think FedRAMP's awesome. Please send me a sticker. Here's my address. And then you submit it. And then if maybe you get a sticker, right? Like that's what we're looking at here. I see a question from Nathan about should operations and compliance teams have access to the security inbox? We're going to let the cloud service provider sort that out, like yourself. That this inbox is intended to be like you are receiving an email from FedRAMP that if it isn't a test, some serious significant action may be required. It might be like you have to tell us the firmware version of all of your firewalls, right? Like some of us have we've done things like that. Like this is necessary. So you should make sure that's routed to the right people. And in general, in the long term, we want that to be at least routed for awareness to a senior security official. What that means, it can be a SOC analyst forwarding it to a senior security official, et cetera, but we just want to make sure that senior officials know when FedRAMP is emailing your company. So you don't have the excuse of like, well, you emailed my SOC inbox and like nobody saw it kind of stuff.
Pete, we have a follow-up from Nathan. Is this for all comms or just security incident?
Yeah, so if you look through the FedRAMP security inbox, there's a lot more details about the restrictions of what types of notifications are in there. This is an example of what we very specifically did was like we classified 3 types of communications: emergency, emergency test, and important communications. If it is not labeled with one of those, then it is you respond to that email just the way you would respond to an email from us normally, which hopefully would be pretty quick and taking it pretty seriously, but you know, is what it is.
Another question on the security inbox email. Does this apply to comms from federal agencies or to our security inbox?
That's a great question because this is an example of things changing through the RFC process. So in the first request for comments, we initially said any communication from all federal agencies. We got a lot of feedback on that about how confusing that can be. And we actually went and talked a little bit with the board and a little bit with OMB to have the reminder that M2415 explicitly positions FedRAMP as the center point of wide-scale communications with industry. So we decided to have this focus entirely on communications from FedRAMP. So this is very specifically intended to be about security-related urgent communications. Like that's it. And then we'll use that same inbox for like, hey, FYI, this new thing is going into effect, but that will be informational and you don't have to respond to it the same way. Agencies can use this if you provide it to them, but the rules for response and things like that don't apply to agencies. You should coordinate that with your agency customers and provide them the level of service that they pay for.
I think you may have answered this already, but still with the security inbox, will this test be conducted during normal business hours?
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Whoever asked that, like, I was laughing because I know there are some people that were probably like, oh, we're gonna send this thing at. So we're actually gonna, when we send public notification that we're gonna do a test, we're not gonna say exactly when we're gonna do it, but like, we'll say at some point in the next 2 weeks, at 10 a.m. or at 2 p.m. or something reasonable like that, we're going to conduct this test. Be ready for it. So 100% business hours and no like 4:59 p.m. Eastern kind of nonsense either. Like I said, we're not trying to play here. We're not trying to bully people or mess with you. We just want to make sure that we have a way to talk to you.
Yeah, on that theme, somebody asked how we're notifying people about the mandatory BIRs. And that's part of the chicken and the egg problem is that like we discovered that people aren't keeping their email addresses updated on their marketplace listings. And that's how we know how to contact you. So we don't have updated contact information for you guys, you will not get the mandatory notifications that we're sending out on behalf of the FedRAMP PMO to try to tell you that there are changes that you need to address. So we're trying to put this out publicly, putting it out on our blogs, on our websites. We're holding these community meetings for you. We're trying to email it out to any POCs that we have on Marketplace. We're doing our best here, but we need participation from you guys to make sure that your Marketplace listings are up to date and that we have correct contact information for you.
And I'm also just going to add on to this to be really clear. It is a FedRAMP authorized cloud services responsibility to keep up with FedRAMP requirements, full stop. Like we do everything. We post, like Nicole said, we post a lot of places. We make information available in a lot of different ways. But at the end of the day, someone at the cloud service provider needs to be paying attention to what FedRAMP is doing. At this point, I think we've almost exhausted. One of the things I'm considering is maybe if we can do some kind of RSS feed that you can subscribe to. But again, that's like requires you to subscribe to it, pay attention to it. So it is on the cloud service provider. There's no, I didn't know about this. And that especially applies to the recommended secure configuration process, which is going to affect in March. There's no excuse that you didn't hear about it. But the flip side is we are always delaying corrective action with grace periods to give you that opportunity to mess up at least once. Somebody has said, if you're going to name and shame, can you also name the 3 fastest replies? Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, that's actually like, I think like I highlighted the negative case, but like the positive case is the coolest thing. Like that's the security factor. It's like if you have a FedRAMP low system that's routinely replying within 25 minutes, and that tells you something about their security posture, you know, that is meaningful, and you should have that information. So everyone, we're going to publish everyone's time. Another question about in process included in the testing. So at the moment, our plan is to include everyone that is in the marketplace in this testing so that we have this available ahead of time, et cetera. We likely will not penalize anyone. We're not going to like publicly show statistics on folks that aren't authorized. But we want to make sure that in process folks are also meeting these requirements and that they have an email that we can talk to. There's a bunch of questions about specifics. I'm not going to go into specifics in this because like we have a document written down for a reason. Go look at the document and spend some time digging through it after this call.
Yeah, you can also put specific comments or questions in our discussion posts on GitHub. We have a specific Rev5 section for that. And we will engage answering specific questions, preferably publicly. Like you can always send to info@fedramp.gov. Like that is a method, but if it's a question that would benefit from a public answer, post it on a discussion post and we'll answer it publicly.
Yeah. And a recent comment, this is heavy-handed and not well thought out. You're wrong. We posted public comment on this for 30 days as required by law and received significant feedback. It was widely discussed with agencies and with cloud service providers. And we responded and adjusted it considerably based on feedback. So if you didn't participate in the RFC process and weren't aware of this, then that's like a super bummer because we really focus on those RFCs. And that's why we're going to talk today about some upcoming RFCs that we're going to have to make sure that you're aware of those and kind of participate in those. Yeah, there's for the private email inbox, I think there's a form to fill out, right, Paul? Or is it just email info at?
Email. Yeah, so I think we updated it to the info at.
Yeah, email info at. Okay.
Yeah. All right, let's shift to talk about recommended secure configuration. We've talked a lot about the security inbox. More specific questions, again, please post on our Rev5 discussion post, and we're happy to answer those publicly. For the recommended secure configuration balance improvement release, this is a result of the Executive Order 14144 that came out about this time last year. It requires FedRAMP to incentivize or require cloud service providers to provide secure configuration recommendations for their services to their agency customers. This is going to allow agency customers to configure their use of your services in a way that is the most secure option for their particular mission. So we want very clear instructions for what those top level admins need to look at, the settings that they need to configure, how do they configure your service from initial implementation all the way through maintenance to make sure that they are operating your particular service as securely as possible. There's only a couple must statements in this secure configuration guidance. It's really not, there are 10 particular topics in this, so it's not long. There are a lot of should recommendations including things like API access, exportability, machine readable configuration so that people can pull these automatically. Understand that by March is a pretty quick turnaround time frame, so that's why we made a lot of these shoulds. CISA Scuba project has some good examples of what machine readable formats for secure configuration could look like. There are some other, I mean, we didn't actually make formal recommendations or formal requirements of what machine readable or even human readable formats of these particular secure configurations should look like. So it's up to you to determine what works best for you and your company and the agencies that use your service, but please make it easy to understand, easy to follow so that any admin from any agency customer can easily adopt the secure recommendations that you make. Pete, I know you have stuff to add on to this.
Yeah, I mean, for this one, I think we might as well just go right into questions, and we'll see how quick we can come through some of these. There's kind of a bunch of general questions here related to other stuff that we can address at the end, but there was a question about the should requirements, like should versus must is very simple. Don't overthink it. Don't turn it into a fight. Don't feel like anyone's trying to get you. Nobody's trying to get you. Should means you should do it unless you have a reason not to. And if you have a reason not to, then you document that reason. That reason is any reasonable reason that the CSP determines based on their business. That reason can be, it's too expensive. That reason can be, it will take me 6 months to do it. That reason shouldn't be, I think this is dumb and I don't want to. Like, that's not a really good reason. But like, it is up to the CSP to document that justification, and it doesn't require validation from a 3PAO or anyone else. We will accept that justification as long as it is reasonable and valid. And I know a lot of people then go, have you defined reasonable and valid? And I say, it is what two reasonable people having a reasonable conversation would agree. And then people go, but no, like you really need to define reasonable. And then I go, if you're asking me to define reasonable, you're not one of the reasonable people. So that's going to create us the problem. It's like, realistically, nobody's trying to get anybody on this. Like, the CSP knows. And as long as the reason really isn't, I just don't want to because I think this is stupid. I mean, to some degree, that might even be considered a reasonable reason. So focus on the must requirements. You will benefit. One thing that I will say again and again and again as FedRAMP transitions, we're talking about moving past a bar and moving towards measuring real security decisions and the value they have. If you meet should requirements, your FedRAMP ranking, your ability to be used by agencies and to meet agency use cases will be higher. You will be more likely to get more agency adoption and use when you are meeting FedRAMP recommendations. So if you're okay with not meeting recommendations and losing out on business, that's totally fine. And again, a lot of this comes down to, like, in an ideal world, it's going to be like RFP driven. An agency is going to say, I want to use your product, but I don't like that you don't do this thing. So I'll pay you an extra $500K to do this thing when we buy your product. Nothing wrong with that. So we're not going to be involved with like validating any of that or having 3PAOs fighting over it or anything like that. Okay. Anything else? Yeah. So here's a question about, like, should we post it? Is it enough that we post it public or any other action that we take? I mean, this is very clearly outlined in the requirements, which is that, like, you just have to provide it. So public is fine in this case. In fact, public is ideal because we want the public to use it too. Public that isn't even behind a trust center is great, right? Like, there are plenty of these cloud service providers that offer this. I think the key thing that we'd ask is that we're looking for very specific guidance on administrative level privileges and roles. And that is often kind of buried in guidance. And some cloud service providers, you have 15,000 pages of secure configuration guidance, and we're hoping that you simplify that in this case. But yeah, public absolutely that.
Some secure configuration guidance is for versions of the product that the agency customers don't have. And so there may be extra options or a particular configuration that an agency just doesn't have access to. So also helping agencies understand what is the right configuration for them with the version of the product they bought from you. That's going to be super helpful rather than wading through public documentation for features that they don't have.
Yeah, there was another question here that's like a little bit of a theme, and I understand this is tough, but a question about like when did we first talk about recommended secure configuration standard? I want to be clear, this is another one that, like everything that FedRAMP does like this, it went through RFC. So in September, we posted that we were going to do this. We asked for a couple of public comments on it. We closed that a bit later than the typical 30 days because of the government shutdown. And then we've been sharing that repeatedly in all FedRAMP channels. And like, this is a thing where folks need to if you're responsible for this, you need to follow all of our comms, and two, give us meaningful, realistic suggestions about ways to improve that don't create too much of a burden for us. Because right now we're blasting this stuff all over the place, and it's kind of shocking if folks, can't find it along the way. Great question from Dave Beckett. Like, what if there's no admin access for a product for the customer to configure? So I want to be really clear. As we set policies, we try to also use defined terms in order to clarify specific things. And the defined terms include sort of they're like a subroutine that you can apply. And so when we talk about administrative stuff, the definition of that is outlined in the FedRAMP definitions. And it means basically the core accounts that are used to configure the tenant. So if an agency has the ability to get an account and then use that to configure their tenant, that's the account. If that's not a thing that happens, then your recommended secure configuration guidance is pretty short. And yeah, a great point from Lindsay before we jump into RFCs, which is that like FedRAMP.gov site navigation is super confusing. That is absolutely right. There's a number of reasons for that. I take full responsibility for that within the context of the current environment. If you've followed what's been going on this year with FedRAMP, there was a long period of time I, as the FedRAMP director, was doing almost all of the website updates because I was the primary technical person remaining on the team that knew how to do that. And I did a mess of things because I focus on getting information out, effectively and fast, and not so much about things being pretty. We were able to get a couple of staff added to our team to help do some more intentional build outs. And we've been working towards making improvements to kind of clean up some of the mistakes that I have made over time. But in general, we are really kind of making a mess. We're doing construction the best way we can. And that's why, again, like I keep saying, we're supporting this with all this other communication as much as possible so that folks can keep in line and pay attention to the new things. Right now, we are partially through a transition from one type of documentation to a different type of documentation to both improve things and meet like requirements on the federal government for accessibility, for modern capabilities, et cetera. I made the decision to do that piecemeal as those materials came available, rather than to spend 6 months with it in the background and then do a big cutover, because like that is rough for us and it's rough for everyone else. We want you to basically know what we're doing as we're doing it. All right. So I think that's a big talk through here. We'll have some opportunities to talk through general questions in a second. Let's go to the next bit, which is our RFCs, pending release. So y'all are going to have a little bit of spoilers here today, and we wanted to do this very explicitly to make sure that folks were aware. Can't tell you exactly when these are going to get released because it might vary a bit. It could be as early as next week. It might be some of them. It might be partial, et cetera. We're not going to give you a ton more details about this before we cut back to general Q&A, but I wanted to give you a heads up and have this available so people know. Some of this is on our roadmap, and some of it we need to add to our roadmap. So start paying attention to our site next week, and all of our media, subscribe to our things, get our e-blast. There's a subscription thing at the bottom of our fedramp.gov page where you can get updates from us. LinkedIn for the FedRAMP thing, everything, like the GitHub community. Like, let's go. We're going to release an RFC that is going to be all of these. Let me actually take a moment. RFCs are requests for comments. That's we release draft guidance before it has been completed to get community-wide feedback. This has two purposes. One, it signals our intent and a thing that we have prioritized and are working on. And two, it allows the community to provide us with direct, meaningful feedback on pre-decisional processes and memorandums. Our process is typically 30 days. We strongly encourage informal feedback. We love when people are sending us thoughts rather than big formal letters and things like that. We prioritize everything equally. If you're a big trade association or if you're, Jimmy 420 on GitHub, we're going to take that feedback with the exact same leverage and importance as we go about it. We work through that feedback with humans. I personally review every single comment and go through and make changes based on those comments. And every single process, document, material that we've produced after the RFC process has come out considerably differently. That said, some of these are pretty simple. Some of them will be easy. Some of them are a lot more complicated. So let's talk through what we're looking at. Requiring the reporting of assessment costs. This is something that has been a little bit of a chicken and egg. A lot of chicken and eggs that we're trying to adjust right now. Like this is like the year of 2026 is the year of chicken and egg problems. FedRAMP needs to review the costs of independent assessments in the FedRAMP process. We're required by law to do that. We don't have that information. How do we review that? The answer is we require people to tell us that it's information. This is another example of a situation that could be considered heavy-handed because we're going to say all cloud service providers must tell us how much they paid for assessments and some other things related to that. But that is required in order for us to meet the law. This RFC proposes methods for doing that are designed to be simple, low burden, etc. It will include reporting costs at initial authorization submission and reporting costs during annual assessments, and having an assessor, the assessor, provide a signed attestation that the numbers that were submitted to FedRAMP are correct. Unfortunately for Rev5, it means a new SAR Appendix, but we'll try to keep it simple. It will only have 5 or 6 rows in it, and those are all outlined in the RFC. The next one, actually, Tara, so this is addressed in the RFC, but I'll just say, like, this information will not be shared in a de-identified fashion, except as to meet legal requirements. I can't tell you what our FOIA lawyers would consider, but generally, we have been successful at redacting names from FOIA things that we have released. Our intent is not to ever say cloud service provider A paid this much from assessor B. It'll just be, here's a graph of assessment costs. Okay, for RFC 20, Rev5 machine-readable packages. This is a big one. We're giving you just an initial drop here. The long and short of this chicken and egg is for a long time. In fact, in 2022, the law required FedRAMP to figure out how to do this in a year, which made me like LOL, because how does FedRAMP accept documents in machine-readable form when nobody's producing the documents in a machine-readable form? So this is requiring cloud service providers that are maintaining the Rev5 process to switch over to machine-readable packages. There's a lot to it. It's multi-page. It's very complicated. It's going to take a minute for folks to work through it. I'm not going to go through all the details of what that looks like here, but a key factor is that it's going to allow for submission in OSCAL, as well as any emerging format that is supported by 5 or more cloud service providers. And we expect that to include things like, you can do a fork of OSCAL and, make it like whatever makes sense for cloud service providers that you want to use, we're going to accept it. Agency adoption, all that stuff, not relevant. We're not worried about it. It's machine readable.
if an agency needs a Word document produced from a machine-readable package, you can do that. The long term is that we need these packages in a machine-readable format so that agencies can eventually start ingesting them. But we have to have, somebody has to lay that egg so that we can get our chickens. And right now, the egg is cloud service providers producing machine-readable packages, and we're proposing a way to do that. Final thing I'll add on that is that, like everything that we've been doing, there will be massive, massive grace periods. In fact, we have built in a 1-year grace period to this policy. So trying to really minimize impact. Next, updating the FedRAMP marketplace. This one's going to be big. There's more changes to it in process. The nut of this is that we're going to have specific labels for FedRAMP authorized services. We're going to finally call things FedRAMP certified. And we're going to do our best to kind of avoid some of the confusion about authorization. I still, to this day, hear people say they got a FedRAMP ATO. There is not, and it has never been such a thing as a FedRAMP ATO. There has, for a period of time, been a FedRAMP TATO, which is a made-up thing that was very confusing, but it is not an ATO. And even in the law, it's hilarious because anytime they talk about FedRAMP authorization, they say FedRAMP authorization. And any other time they talk about authorization, they're actually talking about authorizations to operate from an agency and not a FedRAMP authorization, which makes it really confusing because it'll be like FedRAMP authorization can be used for an authorization. Like, what does it even mean? Why is it the same word? So we're going to all stop referring to it as an authorization. We're also going to allow consultants to be listed in the marketplace. We are going to require independent assessors and consultants to share public information about their pricing structures. It doesn't have to be detailed proprietary stuff, just general. You're offering a service, give us a ballpark. I expect this one will end up like, I think everyone remembers California's law on posting salaries for positions. And then you had companies like Netflix that would post like salary ranges 80 to 950K for this position. That happens, that's totally fine. But in general, we're looking to have some big improvements there. One thing that you'll note in this bullet is that we're phasing out FedRAMP Ready, but we're replacing it with something else. So let's jump to the next slide. Oh, actually, no, big thing I'm missing, huge spoiler. We're adding the ability to be listed on the FedRAMP marketplace if you are in the preparation phase for FedRAMP. This will let you as a company signal demand to agencies. It will let agencies understand who is beginning to go and get FedRAMP. And it will generally allow the federal government to see what else is out there. This is like a huge thing. The preparation phase is phase 1 of the NIST RMF. We're very excited about this. And we think this is going to really help us also make the case bluntly to the wider government. If we see 300 cloud service providers in the preparation phase, then I have a much better business case to hire more people and expand the FedRAMP security service. All right, next one, next set. All right, here's another big one. We're going to propose FedRAMP program certifications for Rev5 as an option through the year. This will mean that if you have a Rev5 security package that doesn't have an agency sponsor, and you meet certain additional requirements, including adopting some stuff from the Rev5 balance improvement releases, FedRAMP will do the sponsorship and the certification. This is intended to be kind of a last hurrah of new Rev5 certifications through the year before we retire new Rev5 certifications at some point in FY27. But we have right now enough capacity where if people adopt some of the newer requirements that'll make review simpler, then we believe that we can make this happen. I don't think we can do, our estimate is around 50. So we're going to see what happens with demand. But this will be a big opportunity for folks that have put the work in and are ready to go right now. They can spend a month or two implementing some new stuff and then have an option without an agency sponsor. RFC 23, not giving you too much on this one, but we are going to allow cloud service providers that have certain external frameworks, like SOC 2 assessments, high trust, things like that, to come into the FedRAMP marketplace as a special designation of FedRAMP authorization for negligible risk use cases and pilots. And that's going to allow folks to kind of test the waters a bit. Then we also have a pending RFC about FedRAMP's trademark usage.
This one is something that OGC has been working with on us for a while. It's going to include all sorts of stuff. The main thing is that it both tightens and restricts the trademark usage in some ways while loosening it in others. So for example, and this is all not necessarily going to be in the final RFC, but some of the things that we're pushing for and we're looking at and we're discussing are things like, if you do say that you're FedRAMP authorized, you will have to link to the marketplace to show your actual listing. This is something that's a pet peeve of mine. Even GSA does it in press releases. We say something's FedRAMP authorized, and I'm like, is it though? Like, I don't know. We're also looking to clamp down on the trademark in some areas. Like, it has always been a trademark violation to use FedRAMP or a FedRAMP similar word to appear to provide a service that is similar to FedRAMP's. Just like you cannot make a company that instead of being called Pepsi Cola is being called Nepsi Cola and also sell cola. Like, that would not fly. So we're going to clamp down on that a bit. And my hope and dream, personal hope and dream, is I'm trying to get permission to open up the trademark just in general for swag, so that we can make it really clear that if you get FedRAMP authorization, you can make yourself a cool T-shirt. And if you want to just like get yourself a mug that says, I barely survived a FedRAMP audit or something, like, you can do that. Nobody's going to shut down your Etsy store. So that's what we're looking for on that. All right, so I took more than I thought on those, because I'm really excited about these RFCs, and I hope that you read through them all. And we're going to release some short form, like maybe 10, 15, 20-minute videos about each RFC with some additional background as well. And I'm super excited about them. So there's a bunch of questions that have come throughout this conversation, some that we put off, and with only 4 minutes left, we're going to crank through on a lot of different things. So I'm going to start here back at the top. Updates on when CSPs that have a status of in-process review will be finalized. As of last quarter, our final review process is under 30 days. When an agency completes an authorization, something moves in process and goes to FedRAMP, it is authorized on average in under 30 days. If something has not been authorized since July 2025, then most likely there is a problem with that cloud service and it is in remediation. So it has nothing to do with us and everything to do with them. But we are hitting 30-day reviews. That is our target, and that will continue to be our target. Feedback on the URL pages and all that stuff changing. I totally understand. I totally feel you. The best thing that I can continue to say is that you should not be bookmarking and downloading specific documents. Like, for now, go to the page, find the document that you're looking for. That's the best way to navigate this for here and forever. Things will change. It's a modern internet. Like, we got to do it. We can't just like constantly. We did try to create a lot of redirects as we change stuff around, but sometimes it's hard. Question on the vulnerability management open beta. There's language on the open beta that says CSPs must plan to address all requirements by the end of the beta. Is this intended to mean that the new standard will be mandatory for all Rev5 CSPs? No. Any application within or comment like that within such a thing is referring to people that are using it. So it means any cloud service provider that is participating in the beta should plan to adopt all of the requirements by the end of the beta period. Well, there's a lot of questions here.
I'll throw another plug for the discussion posts. Like, that's where you can.
Oh yeah, that was actually a great. Like we are in GitHub discussions all of the time. Like, that's the place to do it. We prefer that over InfoAt because it is a public forum and other people can see the answers. Like, I regularly tell people that send me a personal email at pete@fedramp.gov, which anyone is welcome to do. But I regularly would tell people, don't send this to me, post this on GitHub so that I can answer this so everyone can hear it. There's a question about assessment cost formulation. Check out the RFC, but general, I think it's pretty clear that you know how much you paid on an assessment over the last year. A question about how soon after RFCs are closed can we expect these to be requirements? It changes all the time, dude. We got one thing that went through like 3 different RFCs. Like, the VDR came through like 3 different RFCs before it came to VDR. So like you gotta pay attention and see what's up. What we do is, if you go to FedRAMP.gov/RFCs right now, anytime we finalize an outcome from one, such as create a formal document, we'll put a note there that says like, this is what's happening with it. When will these RFCs be on the website? Figure it out. You're going to have to wait and see.
Subscribe to our listserv.
Yeah, subscribe, like, ring the bell. What else have we got? What else have we got here? What is the URL? FedRAMP.gov/RFCs. That's pretty simple. Further considerations between DoD IL and phasing out Rev5. I feel like the DoD thing is a great way to end this conversation. Our intent, let me be very, very clear. I have said this again and again, and I understand that this isn't a promise I can make, and I understand that it's complicated and hard. But at this time, FedRAMP has no intent of fully turning off Rev5 as a path for existing authorizations. Rather, we plan right now by the middle of FY27 to phase out Rev5 for new authorizations. But folks authorized before that will have the ability to continue to run Rev5 indefinitely. As they see their customers leave and as they see folks switch to 20x-based authorizations and other cloud services that provide more security, more validation, and more modern, easier to follow circumstances. When it comes to the DoD and Rev5, we don't know what the DoD is going to do in the next 6 months. You don't know what the DoD is going to do in the next 6 months or 12 months or anything around this. We work with the DoD and DISA. We have DoD on the FedRAMP board. We are always in alignment. DoD strongly supports FedRAMP 20X for the commercial use cases that 20X is designed for. There will always be a different expectation from the Department of Defense for things that are higher impact and that are a bigger deal. If you didn't see, if you don't follow me on LinkedIn, I recently posted a quote from a report from the year 1990 that was 3 years after system security plans were first kind of really required. And NIST did, and the NSA, I believe. This is so old that NIST was like the Bureau of Standards at the time or something. They did a report where they reviewed all system security plans submitted across the government, civilian agencies, and DoD. And 35 years ago, in that report, they noted the DoD did not follow the same processes that the rest of the civilian government followed. And so when you bring up this, you are talking about solving a problem that has been the case for more than 35 years. It is not a problem that I expect FedRAMP will solve. And it's not a problem I expect the DoD will solve. I think as an industry, we need to be aware of the fact that the DoD will have different requirements, and we'll do our best to respect theirs, and they'll do their best to respect ours so that it's the least amount of danger, effort, and complexity to make things portable between those two agencies, or between DoD and the rest of the government. All right, that's it. We're 3 minutes past. It's been a while since we've had one of those. I really appreciate all the questions. I'm sorry this is so many for us to keep up with. Come back next week for the 20X community update. Maybe you'll have an opportunity to ask some of these questions again, and we can move on and through. Otherwise, we'll see you all on the other side and on the interwebs soon. Cheers, everyone. Thank you.